On today's episode of Living by Design, host Kathy Holloway Hill takes on the very difficult subject of domestic violence. Living by Design is sponsored in part by Household Furniture.
Don't make the real mistake. Come on to Household Furniture.
Hi, I'm Kathy Holloway Hill and welcome to the Living by Design show. Today's show is a very heart-touching story and it's very near and dear to my heart because it's the topic of domestic violence. We have millions of individuals in our nation who are a victim to this horrible, horrible epidemic. And we're very fortunate today to be here at the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence with the executive director, who is Miss Laura Berry. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad you agreed to talk to our viewers because we have a lot to talk about today because this is a massive epidemic that is just getting worse instead of getting better. So let's start out by you just telling our viewers what the Indiana Coalition is about and how we can help all individuals, not just women, but males and our youth and everyone. How can you help them here at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence?
The Coalition Against Domestic Violence started in 1980. It was founded by 5 wonderful women in our state who had begun shelters and really wanted to keep those services going and help develop new services. Right. So since that time, in our 30, almost 4 years, we have expanded the services and the work that we do here. We operate a statewide toll-free hotline that is easy access for victims to call and get resources and referrals. We do education and training throughout the state to law enforcement officers, to our providers, to other professionals to help them understand what domestic violence is, what's an appropriate response to domestic violence, intervention strategies, prevention, a very long list that will help those who work in this field. Other areas of work that we do is legal. We do legal representation for victims of domestic violence who are trying to separate from that violence. We help with protective orders, enforcement, obtaining orders, some custody and divorce. We give a lot of legal advice to victims who are just seeking those answers on what they can expect and what they do. And then we also help legally our programs and services with client issues and subpoenas and other court documents that they need help with.
That's great. I absolutely love to hear that. Now, I'm sure you probably get a lot of situations where there has been threats of harm or threats of even killing the person or murder or whatever. So is that how you get law enforcement involved to partner with you so that you can provide that protection that your clients need?
Well, there are different ways that we do. Oftentimes, it's not unusual for cases of domestic violence that their relationships can escalate to lethal force. And, you know, we work with many individuals and groups to what we call reduce domestic homicides and get prevention initiatives and intervention strategies in place. So, for example, with law enforcement, we have a special project that's called the Lethality Assessment Project. Right. And law enforcement agencies responding to a scene of a domestic do a danger assessment or lethality screen with the victim on the scene. And we talk about, have these things happened to you? Have you been threatened to be killed? Have they ever used a weapon against you? Do you have children that aren't in common? Has he recently lost his job? Does he have access to firearms? And based upon those questions, law enforcement know what that risk is to a victim and can directly link them to a service provider in that area saying, I'm fearful for your safety. Women in your position have been killed or seriously injured, and I want to get you help. So we work with law enforcement agencies and our providers to make that happen so we don't lose other individuals. You know, other opportunities that we have are prevention. Let's start first and foremost so we don't reach that level of lethality in situations. We have strategies within our schools to talk about on an individual level, to talk with youth about violence prevention and looking at risk and protective factors in dating violence, relationships, and sexual violence. We also work and refer our victims to domestic violence programs when it's, you know, situation is at crisis level and safety is really critical for them. And getting into shelter and away from that situation is one that is really needed at this time.
Awesome, yes, wonderful, wonderful. I love your button, no more. And I know exactly what that stands for. we're not going to take it anymore. No more abuse, no more violence, no more threats, no more. And I know we were talking a little bit before the show started, and you mentioned that the abuse is not just the physical, emotional, psychological, but it's also sexual in nature. So that counts.
Yeah, domestic violence encompasses many things, as you just mentioned.
Yes.
If it was just physical violence, that'd be so easy to spot and identify and intervene.
With the bruises and marks, right.
Absolutely, and that's where we always jump to that conclusion in domestic violence. But you also shared that it's emotional, it's financial, but it's also sexual violence.
Financial, interesting.
Absolutely, but in sexual violence cases, when we're working with victims, it's often not something they want to disclose to us.
Right.
They don't want to talk about being forced into a sexual relationship or forced sex or any harm that's come to them. And that really takes a level of trust working with the victim to be able to talk about that. Because it's so much easier to deal with the bruises and the broken bones than it is to talk about being sexually violated.
Wow. That's great, and I'm so glad we're saying these things, because there are so many viewers, people who are seeing this show that are in relationships, and they're probably saying to themselves, or they have been saying to themselves, oh, this is not an abusive relationship. But now they're hearing the things that we're describing, and hopefully now they're looking at it from a different perspective, from a different lens, so that they can know and recognize, because you can't fix what you don't face.
Well, and I also think victims are great actors and actresses.
Yes.
They often don't display to their friends, their congregations, their other family members that they're in a violent situation. One, we as society don't necessarily always accept that somebody's in a domestic violence situation. We think that they should be smarter and stronger than that. If they don't understand the dynamic, or if they've never personally been involved, it's still a private matter. So victims are afraid to disclose that information and share that information, not certain what that support's going to be, also not certain what that can mean for them, both financially or for their families.
I recently wrote a book entitled Lies, Love, and Life, and it's about how we put on a mask to hide the pain behind the mask. But we've got to peel back those layers of the mask to uncover and discover who we really are. And you'll never be able to do that as long as you're a victim and allowing someone else to control you and not give you the freedom to just be who you are and live your life. Laura, we are having such a great discussion, but we're going to take a quick break. And we're going to be right back with more of this very, very empowering topic. Stay tuned. More for Living by Design.
Tom, you and I have been customers here at Household Furniture for a long time.
Oh yeah, you come out to my house, well, you think you walked into Household Furniture.
Okay, so you've got dining room furniture,
Yes.
televisions,
Yep.
bedroom suits,
Yep.
and appliances?
Yeah.
It's all here at Household Furniture. New name brand living room groups, bedroom suites, TVs, and appliances. Plus, ask about our in-store financing and cash discounts.
Don't make the rental mistake. Come on to Household Furniture.
I believe I can achieve greater things.
I believe I can balance both work and school.
Work in a field I enjoy.
Provide more for my family.
I believe I can push aside the excuses and start on the career path that I deserve.
Believe in yourself. We certainly do. Since we opened our doors in 1902, Harrison College has over 75,000 graduates, offering over 30 programs in a wide variety of fields, including culinary arts, healthcare, IT, veterinary, criminal justice, and business. Career-focused, quality education with a student-centered atmosphere. Enjoy the flexibility of day and evening classes available online or at one of our 12 campuses. Plus, you may be able to receive some form of financial aid. And we have a tuition freeze program, so you have peace of mind when budgeting for your education. We work to connect graduates with potential employers.
I called.
I made the call.
Now it's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
Start your enrollment today. Classes are forming now. Harrison College, career-focused, success-driven.
Are you sick and tired of feeling sick and tired? Do you feel that life is passing you by, yet you have nothing to show for your efforts? Are your employees miserable with low morale and high stress? Hello, I'm Kathy Holloway Hill, founder and CEO of C. Holloway Hill Enterprises. And if you answered yes to those questions, then our quality workshops, seminars, keynote presentations, and one-on-one life coaching will provide you the tools and methods you need to elevate to a higher level of awareness. Life is not a destination, it's a journey, and you keep going and growing. So if you're ready to grow with us and experience results-oriented services, then contact C. Holloway Hill Enterprises today at 812-418-3391. We're back, and we're now here with the amazing Miss Susan Harrell, who actually works at the Colburn Place. But before I get to that, Susan, I want to talk about your experience being a survivor of domestic abuse and violence. And I want to just ask you a little bit first about how you, when you first started in the situation, I mean, we're going to go back some years, because how long have you been out of it?
About 12 years.
About 12 years?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just go back to when you first met this gentleman, and how did you see any signs, or how did he act in the beginning when you guys first met?
Those are all really good questions, and I'm really glad to be here today to be able to share with everyone.
Thank you.
I just thinking back, I remember I was working at a health food store, and I was going to school full time, and this individual walked in and struck up a conversation. He was a bodybuilder looking for some vitamins, very handsome. And, you know, back then I really knew nothing about domestic violence. I wasn't raised in a home where there was domestic violence. I had a very good upbringing, a wonderful family. So I really felt like I was very naive. I didn't know even what to look for or what the signs were. But looking back, some of the things that I recall after we actually started dating were that he would contact me constantly, and if I didn't answer the phone right away, he would get very angry. If we were out and he thought I was looking at another man, he would become very jealous. You know, just overreacting to things. And
this is when you guys were going together, not
when we
married.
first started dating, right? Maybe 3 months into the relationship, you know. And then if I was late showing up, he would, you know, sometimes have an explosive, you know, outburst. Things that I had never experienced before, and I always thought, well, he must really love me. He must be crazy about me. You know, just the opposite, actually, probably of, you know, what
Obsessed.
the beginnings,
Yeah.
exactly, of what this domestic violence relationship was all about.
Right, right. So what did he say to convince you to marry him?
Well, we dated for a year, and, you know, I really hadn't done a lot of dating. I was kind of shy back then, not so much today anymore, but we just seemed to have lots of things in common. We both really enjoyed football. We loved roller skating and similar movies and music tastes. And so I kind of overlooked probably a lot of the things that I should have paid attention to, thinking that I had just found a good match.
And what were some of those things that you felt you overlooked?
Just, you know, the explosive personality, you know, his anger.
How did he treat service people just when you were out at a restaurant? Was he rude or?
No, you know, he always put on a different face for other people.
In the public.
I was the only person that saw that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde that you hear so much about with domestic violence. When we were out in public, he was always extremely polite, a gentleman, and didn't behave that way. So it was very confusing at times.
I'm glad you're saying this, because there's so many people who are watching this, and I think a lot of people have the definition of domestic abuse or domestic violence in this category, in this box. But what you're describing is a little bit different from what most people typically think, because you think of being rude to service people and you think of them being mean to their family members, but that may not always be the case. So you really have to have your eyes open and listen with your heart and your spirit and your ears and know and connect in with this. So you're married now. And
no, I'm not married. Oh,
no.
okay,
No, I'm just going back into the story. No, you're
Okay.
you're good. I know you're not married now, but okay. So you went through the courtship and you were going together, and then you guys got married, and then when did the abuse start?
Well, and we started having a family, and one thing that I noticed right away that I found to be really unusual was that he wanted me to be a stay-at-home housewife. Kind of, that's where the isolation all began, and then coming home from work, wanting to know how I'd spent every minute of my day, and saying, well, I could have done what you did in half the time, so what did you really do with your time? And just second guessing and being very suspicious and accusing me of cheating, and just really craziness. It struck me as I just couldn't see why, these thoughts would be going through his head, or why he would, feel like he couldn't trust me. It was just very unusual. So, it would go from maybe him coming in from work and maybe dinner wasn't cooked right.
Now, if that were to happen, if he came in from work and dinner wasn't cooked right, or he wasn't in the best of moods, would you say something that just set him off to make him hit you or verbally abuse you? Or
I mean, typically it would start off with the verbal.
Okay.
We would get into an argument of some sort. He would be putting me down. There was always a lot of the emotional abuse, where there are the put downs and that type of thing. And then the argument would escalate, and it would just really turn violent. And then he would flip it around and say, well, if you hadn't done this, or if you hadn't said that, then, or if you would just listen to what I'm saying, and if you would just do what I ask you to do, then I wouldn't behave the way I behave. So there was always that flipping it back and putting the blame on me, the victim, instead of him taking responsibility for his actions.
That's classic.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people see in abusive relationships, that, you feel bad, and in order for them to get beyond their guilt of doing and saying what they've just done and said, now they're going to flip it. Well, it's your fault. It's not my fault, so I'm good. Susan, those are all very good points, and we're going to pick that up after the break. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with more of Living by Design. Stay tuned.
Tom, you and I have been customers here at Household Furniture for a long time.
Oh, yeah. You come out to my house, well, you think you walk into Household Furniture.
Okay, so you've got dining room furniture?
Yes.
Televisions?
Yep.
Bedroom suits?
Yep.
And appliances?
Yeah.
It's all here at Household Furniture. New name brand living room groups, bedroom suites, TVs, and appliances. Plus, ask about our in-store financing and cash discounts.
Don't make the real mistake. Come on to Household Furniture.
I believe I can achieve greater things.
I believe I can balance both work and school.
Work in a field I enjoy.
Provide more for my family.
I believe I can push aside the excuses and start on the career path that I deserve.
Believe in yourself. We certainly do. Since we opened our doors in 1902, Harrison College has over 75,000 graduates, offering over 30 programs in a wide variety of fields, including culinary arts, healthcare, IT, veterinary, criminal justice, and business. Career-focused, quality education with a student-centered atmosphere. Enjoy the flexibility of day and evening classes available online or at one of our 12 campuses. Plus, you may be able to receive some form of financial aid. And we have a tuition freeze program, so you have peace of mind when budgeting for your education. We work to connect graduates with potential employers.
I called.
I made the call.
Now it's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
Start your enrollment today. Classes are forming now. Harrison College, career-focused, success-driven.
back on Living by Design, and we're now here with Susan Harrell and Miss Laura Berry. And we are going to finish our discussion because we are having such a great time bringing the awareness to you and helping you to design your life, because we want you to have a life of purpose and meaning. So let's just get back a little bit to your story and your situation. How did you begin to discover, or I should say, what was your defining moment that made you realize, I've got to get out and I can't keep doing this?
I had left my abuser 4 times. And the final, there's the cycle of violence, where you're the tension building and then the violence and then the honeymoon phase, and you just go round and round with that. And I was in the tension building phase where I knew that violence was going to break out, sometime soon. I could tell it was coming. I had always really held my marriage vows very seriously because of the way I was raised and, the church and everything. And so I had made many attempts to talk to my husband about getting counseling. And I was sitting on the couch with him and just saying, I would really like to give this one last shot. Let's try to get some counseling. Let's go get some therapy. And he looked at me so matter-of-factly, so just this blank, non-emotional person, and said, I'm not the problem, you are. And at that moment, this of course had, been 14 years of, marriage with this man. I just remember to this day distinctly, I felt like a light socket being pulled out of the wall. And emotionally, I disconnected. And I knew that for me, that was it. I always tell women that leaving an abusive relationship is a process. You are with this person, you love this person, you wouldn't be with them if you didn't, and their emotions are all tangled up. And so the process of disconnecting and, disentangling all those emotions sometimes takes a long time. And the average, number of times a woman actually leaves is usually 7. So I really feel like I got out a little sooner than maybe some other women do. And I'm thankful for that I didn't stay any longer than I did.
Right. And there are so many women who don't even realize they're in an abusive relationship. I'm a survivor also. Right. And it took me a while to even know that I was being abused because we had the monetary lifestyle. Right. And sometimes you have to really come to grips or face that situation. Yeah, it's painful to face it. It's painful financially and it's painful emotionally to face it, but you have to. I'm so proud of you for doing that. So is that when you called the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence?
Actually, I went to a shelter.
Okay.
I went to Salvation Army Women's Shelter.
Okay.
And I had been to many shelters.
Okay.
And at the time that I went to the Salvation Army, I was hooked up with a case manager who then referred me to Coburn Place, which is where I work. Of course, we talked about that earlier today. Yes. It's a transitional housing program for domestic violence victims, and I put an application in, did the interview, and I was accepted to be able to move in there.
So you were able to move, you and your children?
Yes.
Awesome.
And, that for me was the defining pivotal moment in my life. It's not just transitional housing. I wish I could, take people, and just show everyone this wonderful place. I remember when they showed me my apartment. I had my own key to my very own apartment. Walked in and it was completely furnished because most victims of abuse leave with just a couple of bags of clothing. I took my kids' little stuffed animals and silky blankets, those types of things for them, but we left with nothing. And we walked into this apartment that had everything from stocked, food pantry, linen, utensils, pots and pans, beds, furniture, everything that a woman would need to be able to support her children, herself and her kids, was there the minute I walked into the door. And it was overwhelming. It just, I still, to this day, it just blows me away to think about what that meant. And it really took probably about 3 months of being there in that safe, secure, stable environment for it to really sink in that I was safe and that I wasn't in survival mode anymore, which then allowed me the opportunity to start thinking about what do I need to do to become self-sufficient. So I was able to go back to college, and I worked full-time, got my degree that I had not completed before I got married, and now I'm working there. So really coming full circle, and really understanding that, what these women are going through, these women that I'm in touch with every day.
And that's so awesome. I'm really proud of you for doing that. And so your work at Coburn Place is to help other women and help them gain the awareness that they need and the empowerment also, the strength and the courage and all those positive emotions that they need to learn how to pull out of themselves.
Right, to help them see, to help them find the strengths that they have, because every person has strengths inside of them, and to walk with them on their journey. To me, I feel like that's such a privilege.
Yes.
It's an honor, and I feel blessed every day just being able, to share and to feel like maybe I have made a small impact, in maybe even just 1 or 2 people's lives, that maybe they can grab onto something and say, I can do this. She did it, I can do it too.
Absolutely. And Laura, I just want to ask you, because I know that you're connected, obviously, with the Coburn Place. If we have anyone who is watching this show, and I know we're going to have a lot of people who are going to be blessed by this interview, how can we get in touch with you and this organization? What do people need to do? Call or email, or how can they?
Well, first, let me say, if it's an emergency situation and somebody's in a domestic violence situation, call 911. Get intervention services immediately for your own safety. There are also a lot of resources. 211 can link you with any program, including the Coalition. But our website is full of resources, and that's www.icadvinc.org. We want to connect victims with all resources that are available, but if it's a crisis situation, don't delay. Call 911. Get the intervention that's necessary for your safety, for you and your family.
Great, and that information is on the screen. We want to thank you all for joining us, and we want to thank you, Susan, so much for sharing your story. Laura, thank you so much for opening up and just giving our viewers everything they need to just get out of that. Don't take it anymore. As Laura's button says, no more. We thank you for joining us for this episode of Living by Design, and we'll see you next week for another empowering episode.